right?
Would be the wise decision tonight.
This or a football, Monday Night Football? Well, good evening and welcome to Planning Commission's study session. Tonight's one and only topic for the study session is outdoor lighting standards. Have been advised by our attorney that a quorum is not necessary for a study session, seeing as we have 3 out of 7, although I do see a 4th is walking down the hallway now. So in about 30 seconds, Commissioner Santana will be present. Yeah, so if we could begin with the staff presentation.
All right, well, thank you very much for attending this evening. I know that there's some interesting travel conditions, et cetera, but this is a part of our our work to bring study sessions and to talk about topics of interest that the Planning Commission have and that staff may also want to discuss. In this case, we had heard about the outdoor lighting standards at one of our 6-month kind of visioning workshop sessions. And so I wanted to introduce our newest planner, Planner 1, Monica Roy. She joined us here in about 2 months ago now, 6 weeks, 2 months, somewhere right in there. So we thought this was a great opportunity for Monica to do some code research and then get in front of the Planning Commission. So with that, welcome. With that, I'll turn it over to Monica for the presentation. Thank you.
Yeah. So good evening, everyone. I'm here today to discuss and know about outdoor lighting standards. Our today study session agenda is having a model lighting ordinance overview and then assessment of lighting regulations of different municipalities in this region, including the city of Littleton. So a model lighting ordinance was developed in 2011 and it was jointly developed by International Dark Sky Association and Illuminating Engineering Society. And the primary reason for its development was to obviously mitigate light pollution, protect our dark sky preservation, promote dark skies preservation, encourage sustainable lighting practices, and support public safety, at the same time providing a universal framework for lighting, outdoor lighting regulation. So MLO is basically structured around a lighting zone-based control system, which they are recommending is best implemented when as an overlay to this established zoning of different municipalities. So they have been categorizing the lighting zones into 5 different categories. So for example, lighting zone 2 can be defined as low ambient lighting and it can be applicable to wilderness areas, natural areas or areas with undeveloped or very low level of rural development. And lighting zone 1 can be defined as low ambient lighting, which can be applied to rural low density residential areas. Lighting zone 2 can be defined as moderate ambient lighting and it can be applicable to light commercial districts or high density mixed use residential districts. Lighting zone 3 is moderately high ambient lighting, which can be applicable to large cities, business district, commercial mixed use, or heavy industrial districts. Lighting zone 4 is high ambient lighting that can be preserved for special cases, heavy duty entertainment, urban districts, or something like that. Next, model lighting ordinance gives us some guidance on how to control non-residential lighting. So here they prescribe 2 types of methods. One is prescriptive method and another is performance method. So prescriptive method is quite precise and verifiable. Most of the projects can apply this method and it does not require to have any lighting expertise. And with this method, what we can ensure is that we can ensure a total site lumens limit. We can also limit off-site impacts. We can ensure light shielding in the parking lots, and we also ensure that there is no light emission above 90 degrees. So in this method, model lighting ordinance also refers to table A, B, and C. So here I am giving an example of table A and table B. So table A, let's focus on just table B for a matter of simplicity. It shows allowed total base lumens for different lighting zones, and it relates with the hardscape area of a development. Now, if we see an example, would be like this. We have a development of a hardscape area, 100,000 square feet, and it falls under lighting zone 2. And if we want to use table B, we go to table lighting zone 2 and we find that base allowance of lighting is 2.5 lumens per square feet of hardscape. So we have this value and we multiply it with the total hardscape area of the development. And then we get the site allowed total initial lumens. And we can use that to check if the project is being compliant or not in terms of lighting. And let's say now the development has three, like this table. The right left side upper table shows that the development has three type of lamp descriptions and the number of quantity and its initial luminaire lumens. So we multiply them, we get a number, and we make a total of these three, and then we get total initial luminaire lumens for that particular development, and then we check that value with our site allowed total initial lumens, and then we evaluate if the project is being compliant or not. That's pretty much the summary of having a prescriptive model applied to a project. Next, there is a second method, which is performance method. This method can be used for projects that has more complex lighting features or designs. It can be used any project that want to customize lighting depending on different building features. But the fact is, a lighting engineer is often required for this type of complex calculation. And for this method, model lighting ordinance is referring to table D and table E. Table D again gives a total initial site lumens, which is quite similar to previous tables, but table E gives us some additional lumens for that unique site conditions. And here I am giving a part of listing value of lumens in table E, where let's say we have a development and that development has outdoor cell frontage and it falls under lighting zone 2. So if a designer wants, he can use this additional 1000 lumens per linear foot for that project and add that with their total site lumens. So that's how this performance method should be applied. And the list is quite big, so the table has a lot of different different values depending on different functionalities. I just give a simplistic view just to communicate well or just have an overall idea. So next, model lighting ordinance focuses on residential lighting guidance. So here we can see the general requirements include that the residential development shall have fully shielded lighting, and fully shielded lighting shall not exceed the allowed lumens output listed in table G. So here we also have another table particularly for residential developments, and depending on the type of luminaire, either it's fully shielded, fully cut off or not, it also determines some maximum allowed lumens. So a project has to comply with this maximum value. And landscape lighting shall also comply with these table G values. Landscape lighting shall not aim at adjacent properties as well. So in this slide, we are seeing an example of residential lighting. This is a residential house that has 5 type of luminaires, and they have listed the locations, listed if the light is fully shielded or not, also listed wattage of the lamps, listed the initial luminaire lumens, and then they compared the initial luminaire lumens with the value that was listed in table G. And none of the value can exceed the value from table G, of table G. And thus we make sure that if the lighting is being compliant or not. So that's an example of residential lighting. So that was the overall review of model lighting ordinance, how they have some recommendation of some methods of controlling non-residential and residential exterior lighting. Now we are looking at some lighting standards that was developed and obviously implied by different municipalities in this region. So what we find is that all of the all of the municipalities are focusing on full cut-off lighting fixture, having lighting directed downward. It has to be fully shielded, and if possible, lighting source should not be visible, at least from a certain point of distance. In our city of Littleton, we use this maximum speed light illumination level regulation, where we control the light level at a property line. We measure it in foot candles. So for example, property line adjoining a residential district or use cannot exceed 0.1 foot candles for speed light illumination. And there are some different values for property line adjoining industrial or manufacturing uses, property line adjoining a parking lot. Single family detached has a different value, which is it does not exceed 0.2 foot candle at lot line. So we are controlling it at the lot line. If that makes sense. So we have a light and it has some slight spillage, and when we measure it at the lot line and measure it in foot candles. That's how our city is measuring lighting standards. Similarly, city of Arvada also have this kind of table, maximum speed light illumination level, and they are also calculating it at a property line, and it's also measured in foot candles. Definitely some values are different than our city, but the concept is similar. And also the city of Boulder has this concept. So city of Boulder has maximum 0.2 foot candles measured at a property line for residential areas, and non-residential areas is also maximum 0.2 foot candles, and if it is exceeded 0.2 it can be approved by city manager. So I feel like the concepts are being similar across the municipalities. Then in terms of light pole height, we see all 3 of the cities having similar kind of standards. So for commercial development area, city of Arvada has maximum 35 feet light pole height and maximum 22 feet for residential areas. City of Boulder is also like maximum 35 feet for non-residential development areas and maximum 20 feet for residential parking areas. And then city of Littleton, we also have maximum 30 feet height for non-residential areas and maximum 25 feet for residential areas. And in our downtown district, we have limited the height to 18 feet. in terms of the submittal of lighting plan, we did not find anything specific to submission of a lighting plan in the city of Arvada, but city of Boulder has this lighting plan required to be submitted when any development application arrives. So it should include location, light fixture, type of light, light initial lumen rating, wattage, and general style of the light fixtures, catalog page, control descriptions, and also a light calculation. And in city of Littleton, we need a catalog page, a photograph of lighting fixtures, and a photometric plot plan. Those are included in the lighting plan when any project is being submitted in the city. Next, we compare the maximum light level that are permitted in different cities. Again, it's measured in foot candles. City of Arvada has maximum 3 foot candles at pedestrian areas, 8 at multiplex multifamily building entries, 8 at parking lots, and 20 at service canopies. City of Boulder also has similar kind of specific regulations. On the other hand, City of Littleton has a generic regulation which says that we allow maximum 40 foot candles in any of the development areas. We do specify South Platte River environment a little bit more. So any residential development should have full cut of fixtures, and the maximum allowed foot candle is 1.5. Half foot candle. Similarly, in the non-residential development in South Platte River environment, we also allow maximum half foot candle. After that, we go towards maximum lumen rating, and here we find that city of Arvada is giving some regulation based on area and based on district and based on per fixture. So in residential area, no fixture can be more than 850 lumens, and in non-residential area, no fixture can be more than 1500 lumens, and no single lamp shall exceed 16,000 lumens for single family districts and 20,000 lumens in industrial districts. So we see there are much more details in city of Arvada's lighting standards while determining maximum lumen rating. And city of Boulder also has this type of specific lighting regulation standards, and I think city of Boulder has more specific and detailed regulation than the city of Arvada, because city of Arvada did not mention if the lamp would be full cut off, full shielded, or not at all. But city of Boulder also categorizing it depending on the lamp style and also depending on the development area. So it has so their code has lot of more details and regulations determining different lumens. So I just pointed out full cut of lighting fixtures for residential areas, and just listed for residential area that 8500 lumens at parking, 4,000 lumens at walkway lights, and 1,800 lumens in stairways and entryways. And then the code goes on and on, like they have non-residential full cutoff, even residential half cutoff, those type of regulations. In city of Littleton, we currently don't have this maximum lumen rating specified yet in our code. Then we compare the outdoor sports or performance venue lighting regulation. City of Arvada says that it should have a glare control package, have some louver shields or similar devices. So some type of lighting shielding devices they are recommending to have. Lighting shall always aim to fall within the primary performance area, and the light height shall not exceed 40 feet. And then City of Boulder defines that maximum lumen rating in outdoor performance venue shall not exceed 107,000 lumens for sports field when full cut-off light is being used. And City of Littleton is being, I think, generic. So we are recommending that all the lights in outdoor performance venue shall be directed and fall within the performance area. And then we go to lighting curfew regulation, and we see that City of Arvada applies that lighting should be reduced by at least 70% after 1 hour of closing, and it should remain in that state until at least 1 hour prior to opening. City of Boulder does not currently specify that type of regulation in terms of lighting curfew. City of Littleton specifies some lighting curfew, and which is lighting that causes trespass should be extinguished by 11 p.m. and not later than 1 hour after closing. And we also have a line of sight distance that has to be maintained, so it cannot be more than 500 feet. Then we see some decorating lighting regulations as well in these three cities. City of Arvada has some specific regulations on there as well. So all the decorative lights shall cast against the building surface or downward. It shall have maximum 16,000 lumens, and patio string lights cannot be greater than 200 lumens per linear feet, and it shall be turned off between 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. City of Boulder only says that decorative lighting shall not be greater than 50 lumens per bulb. Currently in our city, we don't specify any regulation on decorative lighting. Not like some per bulb lumens regulation or the maximum lumens regulation as a whole. So then we look at pedestrian area lighting. City of Arvada has been in detail here as well. So pole light fixtures, they are recommending at least 1 foot candle and maximum 3 foot candles. The maximum height of the pole can be 15 feet, and no single lamp shall exceed 10,000 lumens. And for pedestrian bollard lamps, it cannot be higher than 4 feet, and it shall not exceed 3 foot candles, and no single lamp shall exceed 900 lumens. While City of Arvada has divided pole of pedestrian pole light fixtures and pedestrian bollard lamps, City of Boulder has given a generic regulation which just saying that maximum lumen rating is 8500 lumens in the pedestrian areas of non-residential districts, and 14,000 lumens for parking and loading areas. In City of Littleton, we don't currently have specification on pedestrian area lighting. If we compare to the City of Arvada and City of Boulder. And then so fuel canopies, awnings, these are another point of comparison, but all of the cities here are quite same. All of them are saying that this type of lighting fixtures shall be flushed, mounted, recessed, and equipped with flat lenses. So all these three cities are quite same regulations. For wall pack lights, City of Arvada has some regulations that states fully shielded, directed downward, and shall be maximum of 16,000 lumens. City of Boulder does not have any specification on wall pack lights. City of Littleton has detailed specifications here, so we imply that wall pack light shall only be used on rear and side of the buildings. It should be fully shielded, and it have to be 1600 lumens or lower. It cannot exceed 0.2 foot candle at lot lines, and it's also prohibited in LLR, MLR, and SLR districts. So this was our overall comparison and the reflection of research coming from modern lighting ordinance and looking at some different municipalities. And I think we want to discuss about what in future we can do. Is there any changes, updates, or any recommendation? But we currently, I don't think we are coming to any conclusion right now.
Yeah, excuse me, if I may, just to build on Monica's final statement, we really want to, we had heard some concerns about our existing code, so we wanted to provide you with a couple different examples. One is a far different example with that model lighting ordinance. So to bring that into effect is very comprehensive, right? But it's also quite detailed. It's more detailed than we normally see from submittals. It's also more detailed than oftentimes, staff may be able to, we certainly could implement it if desired. It's interesting too because it actually breaks it out into zones of its own, right? It had that LZ0, LZ1, LZ2. So putting basically another overlay on top for a lighting standard is kind of what that code really looks at. So one of the rationales for why we looked at Boulder in particular was Boulder has a reputation of being pretty stringent on lighting, right? So it's like, okay, we looked at the model lighting ordinance, let's take one of the tougher cities on lighting and see how it compares. And we noticed that they didn't use the same code, first of all. They used much more similar regulation paradigms as City of Littleton does. So that's when we really wanted to compare those, and we wanted to bring in another example of something that we thought would be comparable in a way. As you could see through Monica's research, there were a number of items that we did pretty good on or were comparable on in comparison to the other municipalities. There are a few that we have much less specificity on, and it seems like our approach when this was drafted was a little more site holistically. It really talked about foot candles, at the parcel lines. Whereas it did not get nearly as in-depth when it came to lumens at the fixtures per fixture. And that's where the other codes had that additional layer of regulation. We've got the foot candles out on the pavement, largely at property line, but then you also had that restriction of how bright your fixture could be.
I'll start with a question then. That were you able to find any municipalities that did use the model lighting code or model lighting ordinance?
That's a good question. We have not done quite that extensive of research. We looked at some other municipalities in the area, but we didn't look to see who was actually implementing the model lighting code. We can look into that though.
Yeah, you may be able to get that through IES. I will say, having reviewed scores of photometric plans in my career, that was a very complex system, and if someone has adopted that, I'd be very interested to hear what their experience is with implementation, because the complexity was truly impressive, and it would be difficult to design for and to review as a staff member.
I noticed, just because it hasn't been updated since 2011.
Yeah.
I went on the IES website, it has not been updated, so I would think if it was being adopted by other jurisdictions, that at least they would update it, because the technology has changed so much in the last 13 years.
There were so many references to incandescent and high pressure sodium in the model code, and it's all LED today.
Yeah, very true.
Alright.
Did you run into any places, I'm guessing probably not, that require specific types of lighting as opposed to like the metal halogen versus a LEDs and the like, was there anybody that specifically required you use all LEDs or were most of them just, you can use any type of lighting you want as long as it meets lumen requirements? Cause one of the things I have noticed, like with the installation of the new LED street lights and the like, that is very directed light. It seems to be in the spot that it wants to be, whereas the old sodium halogen, whatever the heck those things were, it was very diffuse. It sort of just went all over the place. It went,
Yeah, or they had to
Further.
use shields to control it.
yeah. Yeah, I just don't know if there's been any thought on requiring specific types of light light bulbs as opposed to lumen counts.
Micah, did you
Yeah.
find that in your research?
Yeah, in general description, it's not like absolutely required, but they like advise you to use LED lights.
Mhm.
So, but they cannot control what type of light some designer or some developer is going to select. But what they can control is that foot candle at the property line, and that maybe lumens, how much lumens it's like coming out of that particular light source. But they do actually recommend to use LED because it's energy efficient as well. So that's how the language is presented in the codes.
Just suggestion as opposed to a requirement.
I am not entirely clear, well, a couple things. One, I think that we should aim for simplicity overall, that the more complicated these things get, the more expensive it is to produce lighting plans and to have the professionals do it. A couple questions I had for you is, do we currently have a size cutoff or project type cutoff for the expectation that you conform to the lighting plan? Or do we require lighting plans even for small homes?
I don't, just, you can go ahead on like after I say, I don't think we have residential areas to submit a lighting plan, but if it's a big commercial development or site development project, traffic lighting
So the
project.
larger projects,
Yeah, is that
like
correct?
an MDP
So-
would have it.
Yeah, an MDP would definitely have
but
it, so.
Not necessarily a 4-unit home being built under.
Yeah, so there is some discretion in the code when it comes to the requirements. I don't recall right off the top of my head exactly what the threshold is, but if you have a site plan, it can be required, and then that's full photometric plan. So typically, we do not do it for single-family homes. I am not aware of us doing it for a duplex. I think the multiplex project that we've been working on at Powers and I'm gonna miss the side street. I think though that they were required to, because it was more than a single building, it was a larger site with multiple buildings. But yeah, we typically don't do it with a single family home. As you saw, kind of that model line ordinance got into the single family. I will say though that we do have some wall pack restrictions on single family, and it's not something that we typically go searching for.
We have wall pack restrictions in residential in general. It seemed like that was where it was not allowed on our residential buildings. Wall packs are not considered an approved type of mount or whatever
Yeah,
for
and
any residential from the what the
I
notes
was
here.
I was surprised on that though, that there was, it was just certain residential zones. It didn't say all residential zones. It was just MLR, SLR.
Right, acreage could put wall packs because they have barns and things that might need wall packs. I don't know. Large warehouses for tractors. I just,
yeah,
it's a
and
quasi-industrial state.
we have utilized that section of the code on a code enforcement basis in the past.
Right, it seems to me that the residential restrictions really are about code enforcement. If somebody's complaining about too bright, that you can go in and say this violates, but we don't use it in the development process at all, really in residential buildings. It's really the same. So that's good. I'm in favor of that approach. The less regulatory overhead we have in general, the better. Just because it can be very expensive to hire a professional lighting consultant. We're struggling with costs of residential buildings. My sense is I like the more restricted the simpler it is, but also the less bright Boulder's light levels, if you compare them to Arvada's, it's interesting that like Boulder takes everything down like a notch or two in a lot of ways. Not in every case. But I had a question, so if you go to your slide 11, and thank you for numbering the slides, Monica, it's so rare that we get numbered slides. On slide 11, Arvada, for instance, says residential, no more than 850 lumens per fixture. Now that seems like an easy thing to evaluate. You've got 10 fixtures, they're each 850 or less, you're gonna have a total of 8,500. So in a place like Boulder where they just say 8,500 lumens at parking, is that 8,500 would be the maximum bulb luminality, or is there, you know, like a tiny parking lot with 10 850 lumen bulbs could be very, very, very bright, but a gigantic parking lot with 10, you know, something the size of the Target lot with that, how do you calculate the lumens in something like that? How is that calculation being done? Is it per square foot? Is it over the total parcel?
The Target probably has a different, because that's for residential, they,
Well, okay, but
it's
okay,
broken,
to say it was a
they're all
huge-
broken into like a whole bunch of different
Is
categories.
it like
Yeah.
on the residential parking lots around Powers Place, they can have no more than 8,500 lumens on the entire? It just seems like that would need to be, I thought the prescriptive formulas were simpler to manage in terms of approving something, cause you can just say, Arvada's, well, you know, you're not allowed more than 850. But when you don't limit the overall lumens, you could put a pole every 10 feet and have just an enormously bright parking lot. So you have Arvada has no way of constraining that. We have the lot line spillover, but
Yeah.
say you had the parking lot in the middle of your parcel, it could be a giant bright thing.
So they also had a similar table to ours, but this would be a secondary standard there, so they also had a property line cutoff table.
Okay, so
So
they use property line
they would do it in
brightness.
combination.
Okay, but how is, I just wondered what these thousands calculations, what are you using to determine it? Is it
So-
for the whole
Per
project?
lamp.
Per lamp, so they can have 8,500 in each lamp in a parking, in a residential parking.
Yeah, so
Whereas Arvada is 10 times less light is allowed per lamp. Wow.
so yeah,
Wow.
and that's something that you know, on the site plans that
I take back what I said about Boulder.
Well, but in other cases, I think you're correct. I think they do take things a notch lower in certain regards. That one maybe not being one of them, but in other
In
places,
general,
they
yes.
they definitely do.
That observation kind of led me to question some of the context of these, like 850 lumens per fixture. Are you comparing that against 8,500 lumens per fixture, or is it maybe 10 poles at 850?
Well, that's what I was asking, how are we calculating the thousands one?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, one other element of the Boulder regulations that I believe they included a limit on foot candles. Is that within the parking area? So the lumens is how bright the source of the light is, the foot candles is how much light is actually projected on the surface.
Right. The photometric plans usually show foot candles.
And
Yeah, that's all that really matters.
They have
And-
some details.
Yeah,
For a
and-
fully shielded light, you know, it could be super, super bright, but it's only illuminating a little tiny spot.
Yeah, and Monica did just make a reference that it's 8,500 parking areas of 6 or more spaces. So there is a little bit of nuance there, but it's still substantially different.
Let's just say you had, we've looked at some apartment projects like that Powers Place project had 200 something parking space, 307 parking spaces. It's a residential building, it'd be limited to 8,500. I mean, that's a lot of parking spaces to eliminate with not a lot of lighting. It just seems like it'd be really
It's a weird number to
weirdly
pick, yeah.
inflexible. It should be based on some kind of square footage or something, but I hope that whatever we decide to do with our code, that it be clear, simple. I found, looking at this personally, and I'm not a professional in this field, but I found it, the model lighting code was very complicated, but even some of these it's complicated to figure out what would be permissible, and I would hesitate as somebody who would, I have training as an architect, but I could never probably do a lighting plan So a small project, even if we require them on small projects, it's just a big expense to have to add to it. I like whatever lighting guidelines we have to be kind of understandable to people who read the code, clear, both to the builders, the architects, and the citizens, so that, we understand what we're looking at. And I know it can't be true for some of the larger, more complicated projects like site development plans for giant things, but certainly at the residential code, it should be pretty clear. I don't wanna see people tripped up.
I do think one of the, stark differences that we have in the codes is the maximum light level in foot candles. So the other codes do provide that maximum at in the parking lot, right? Whereas ours doesn't necessarily, it's just an overall maximum, and 40 sounds really high, right? 40 is high.
The lot line, that means
Well, it's
anywhere, it can never go over 40 anywhere.
So that, the nuance there is that takes into account a gas station all the way down to a large residential development walkway, right? So that's what that's what that maximum is trying to encompass. So which is far larger than the maximums that the other codes are trying to encompass. We do have in Arvada at a service station of 20, so that is actually a pretty good comparison to our 40
Yeah,
max.
because service stations are
And
really
it's
bright.
double, it's cut in half, right?
Maybe too permissive.
I mean, the lumen requirements per fixture is an interesting one. It's something that, we would certainly be able to do more research on and bring back some recommendations if so inclined by the plan commission. But I think that the one that is that's very common to see, and we get the lumens per bulbs per fixtures too, but it's not uncommon for us to see the foot candle ratings on those photometric plans. And that might be a spot that isn't, extremely intense of a change for people that are applying, but it will make quite a bit of difference on the ground. So that might be a spot for us to take a look at.
Yeah, just to break it out a little bit as opposed to, this is the maximum for everything
Yes.
versus
I like
Yeah.
the
maybe for
Arvada,
to sort of
Arvada list
into
is
categories,
handy.
I think, and I do think the foot candle is probably the way to go with it.
Yes.
I would also say that where like these other places have a standard and we've got nothing, we probably do need at least something. I understand that, decorative lighting may not be the, be all end all for something, but we probably need something. I don't know what that something would be, if it's something that's at least somewhat similar to these but I do think that that's a wiser decision to try and, instead of capture everything in one giant, to break it out a little bit.
I think what brought this up for me as an issue was when we were talking about that quick trip that's under construction on Bellevue, is just how bright the entire site was. And yes, the lighting didn't spill off the site, but
It's all,
it
yeah.
was even outside the canopy area, which you expect to be brighter, and some codes do allow to be somewhat brighter. Our 40-foot candles anywhere on site is far more generous than other jurisdictions, and does create on some of these larger sites, especially say the car dealerships, a lot of extra
pollution.
lighting,
Light
we'll say. Just I reviewed the codes and the attachments. I think, one thing that I thought was valuable in the model code was that it was sort of context sensitive, and that might be something for staff to consider, like the corridor mixed areas a little more permissive than the residential areas, even if you're doing something that might be a quasi multifamily in a residential area. But, I thought the inclusion of different contexts was useful. I mentioned the 40-foot candle max being really bright, and having, foot candles based on context is useful, and I've seen a lot of ordinances that use that. Designers are used to doing that. Some things that we might consider are both Arvada and Boulder in certain contexts had a uniformity ratio. One of the parts of lighting design is allowing people's eyes to adjust to the overall ambient lighting in the area and not have areas of bright and then dark. It's actually less safe if you have a very bright spotlight in one area and then it's dark everywhere around it.
Your retinas are.
Yeah,
pupils
and
are closing up.
and this is something as I've, gotten over the age of 50, I'm noticing more than I have in the past.
I mean, Jason, I think the way Boulder is handling that is that they have a very narrow band of
Yeah.
what the maximums and my sense is, I would think one possible way to address this is to keep something like Boulder's relatively conservative light limits in our code, breaking it out by types. I'm not as big a fan of the district thing, because really, CMU is gonna have pedestrian walkways, and so could a park, and so could a residential, like cottage court. Pedestrian walkways, it doesn't really matter what the district type is, it really matters what the use type is. So I'm less interested in looking at our districts and zoning that overlay. But using a very conservative, Boulder-like approach to keeping the differentials down and allowing the community development director to ask for a waiver. If there's a particular use, I'm fine with our code allowing somebody to say, well, I'm selling cars on Broadway and it's light, I'm running till 10 o'clock at night, I need these exceptions for this particular use. And we would have these relatively conservative general principles that people could say, make a case to the community development for an exception. Rather than having really permissive, like, well, 40, as long as you're not over 40, you're good, and then, so that would be my, that's how I would handle it. Cause I think there are gonna be some occasions where somebody wants a particularly strong set of lights. And I don't know what those might be, it might be Hudson Gardens in winter, during their wedding tents, or so, I don't know. But there could be use cases where there are exceptions, but I would say that codes in general shape people's expectations and understanding of the community's approach. So if our community approach is, we really limit candle power on walkways in parking lots, to limit the overall Littleton light explosion. And if you fly over us right now, Pat Cronenberger, former mayor of this, every time I fly over Littleton, you look down, it's like bright as a kiss, it's like fireworks down there, we're really bright on the sky compared to some of the Douglas County and Jefferson areas around us. And code like this, by bringing those numbers down, can address that over the long term without changing anything that exists now. But that's just me, that's just me, please, weigh in.
I think those are, good suggestions, and overall, it's probably brighter than it needs to be, the way that our code is set up.
Seems like it might be.
Yeah, there are a few things, I highlighted some sections of the code. Boulder had a section on color temperature, which may get to the type of lighting that could be useful. It could also be somewhat inflexible because, you can buy residential lights now that are app controlled and you can change the color at will on your garage lighting. But that might be worth exploring for certain contexts. Boulder also had a security light exception that I thought fairly well written, just allows security lights under a certain amount of lumens, even if they're not full cutoff, as long as they're motion activated and go away after 5 minutes. And they also had a section that talked about parking lot lighting and trees should not be in conflict. I've seen that on a lot of designs where the trees start to encroach on the lighting, and then people are incentivized to remove their parking lot trees. And getting into our code, I do think there's some places where it could be, some of the language could be tightened up. In section G for on-site exterior lighting, the hours of illumination, the curfew section, one read of that could be that it's only applicable if it's within direct line of sight of a residential district, which sort of defeats the purpose of the curfew. And I don't think the other codes had that. Let's see. The wall pack lighting section could probably use some cleaning up. I think in one place we say they're prohibited and in another there's a wall pack section. Particularly the site that says wall pack sources visible from any location of the site are prohibited. We probably mean that like visible from off-site. And then
Yeah, that's not the clearest.
yeah, And then one thing that stood out was the South Platte River environs. It really restricted the lighting just within 100 feet of the river, which if we're trying to protect the whole riparian corridor, maybe that should be wider. I mean, it is from a practical standpoint because so much of it is public land, but that might be.
It's 100 feet of the river, not 100 feet of the perimeter of the Platte River Park itself. It's 800 acres.
Yeah.
Depends
Should
on
be-
what time of year you
The
really.
river's a tiny sliver in the
Yeah.
middle, but
Yeah, I think that,
Oftentimes you would still be within the parcel at 100 feet.
yeah, at some parts
the
along
park
the
parcel.
corridor, but
Most of the time.
but the South Platte Park itself is enormous. I
Yeah.
would think that a better approach would use the line of the open space line.
property
The
line
property
of
line of
the
the open
open
space,
space
100
property
feet of that rather than the water area.
It's probably better
Yeah.
use.
there we go. B5 on the very first page, South Platte River environs. The provisions set out below apply to all development within 100 feet of the river's nearest edge, which is an awfully narrow corridor.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, that's all open space practically.
Yeah, I was
It
gonna
should
say,
be
it kind of makes you wonder how
Space,
often it
property edge.
Lucille's is maybe the only building. So, and then there's one thing that wasn't in the example codes that I have run across in codes before is a light loss factor, and I haven't looked at local Littleton photometric plans to see what sort of light loss factor they calculate, and what that is basically when you're doing lighting design, you assume that the fixtures get, covered in bugs and dust over time, so they generate a certain percentage less than they used to. As well as older technologies like high pressure sodium, those light luminaires would actually degrade over time in addition to just dirt building up on the glass. And whether designers are using a light loss factor to allow themselves to cheat above the 40-foot candles when they turn the lights on initially. So it might be useful to require a certain light loss factor in our code, whether that's 1 or 0.9, but something to consider.
Well, it seemed to be that they were, a lot of these codes, they talk about the initial lumens of the lamp. And with the assumption that over time they're gonna go down, but you can't go beyond the initial lumen capability. That's your limiter right there, and so, but yeah. I'm gonna second.
The older lighting, the initial lumens were actually lower, they would
They
take
got
some time to burn in
Oh,
before
wow.
they were full, and then they would start to degrade, so it was kind of like this.
I mean, I think for simplicity's sake, I that sounds complicated to add another layer of calculation to this. I think initial lumens on a light, if we're gonna go for bulb capacity, I would be fine with just, again, a conservative initial bulb strength and then, but I'm gonna second what Jason said, which is I do think that for the site development plans and the big professional lighting plots that we're getting, we should ask for the Kelvin, the color temperature. I think that one of the challenges I face when I drive down Santa Fe is the signboards that are really bright white blue light, whether it's oncoming xenon headlights or the coldness of the ACC's LEDs. I hear we're getting a new 30-foot lighted sign for Breckenridge, so it could be seen from Santa Fe. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, there was a variance application.
And I don't know if these will, but the color temperature of cold blue light is intensely hard on eyes. And I think that if somebody were to present a good case for why we need bright white or blue white light over this golf course or parking lot, fine, community development. But in general, we should look for, in our plans, warmer lights that are softer and easier to deal with, and especially on roadside lighting or road visible lighting. And that is, I can see why Boulder or somebody is asking for the color temperature. And I think that they know it when they're drawing out the lighting, when they know what their bulbs are gonna be, they should include it so we see it clearly in the plans. I know if I saw some really low, cold numbers on the Kelvins, I'd be like, this parking lot around this neighborhood, this is not gonna, no, this should be warmer. But we can't know that when it's not in the plan. Even though I'm contradicting myself about complexity. But it is something that if you're already developing a lighting plan for a large project, it seems like it would be good to have for us, and I like the Boulder ask for that.
I had a couple of questions, maybe more rhetorical question. I guess, what would be our goal? Is it energy savings, is it a reduction of the light island effect maybe, or like seeing it from the sky, like reducing the light levels? I would think energy savings would be important, reduction of glare, safety. Is there anything in the comp plan? Did you look into that? Is there anything that's really kind of guiding us toward something that's better than what we have?
Or maybe the environmental stewardship boards, they did something on light, they not, I think there was some mention in there.
Yeah, they came out with a kind of overall, number point plan. And I believe that lighting was touched on that from a
Seemed like-
sustainability as well as just an environmental perceived factor. I'd have to double check the comp plan. I don't know off the top of my head of a specific point that would indicate. We do a number of things, other things in the code that sustainability standards, et cetera. So most of the time anymore, people are headed towards LEDs. And between the cool and warm, I don't believe that there's a lot of difference in the actual energy that they pull. I think that it's pretty standard. If it's X lumens, it's kind of X lumens, and that's the power that they pull. So I'm not sure from a true energy usage that would make a difference. Just utilizing LEDs would be one of the something that would be a proponent that the comp plan, et cetera, would be proponents of. But we could do a little more research on that.
I will say that I think the comp plan does speak to it indirectly, the existing one that was passed in vision. When it talks at length in places about natural beauty and being stewards of nature and preserving our natural beauty here. And nighttime lighting especially blocks out the stars, it blocks out views of the mountains. I would say it is a concern, at least indirectly, in our comp plan. And so reducing both light pollution in the general sense, but also in the way that artificial light obstructs nature at night is a concern that's probably I see it as included in some of the comp plans, sort of 5 qualitative or 9 qualitative sort of points. It's arguable whether some people maybe think, patio lights are part of beauty, but there certainly can be challenging for experiencing the beauty of the place that we live in. So to me, it suggests that
It becomes a balancing act between that and the
Having
safety of not
yes.
tripping over things or,
Yes.
there's
This is what's so hard to, when we see these numbers, like I don't know if 3 foot candles in a pedestrian way and three 4 foot candles on a parking lot, 2 on the pedestrian walkway. Well, if you can not stumble and fall over on a pedestrian with 2, why is parking lot 3? I don't even know what 3 foot candles is compared to 2. We should have a little light bulb. This is 1,000 lumen bulb, right? I mean, my bike light is 700 lumens, and believe me, you don't wanna look anywhere near the rear of that. So that would have been helpful.
Yeah, that may be useful when you come
Like,
back
what's
with
this
more
room's foot
information.
candles?
And one way that I've done this in the past is used a digital camera with manual settings. Like a phone camera is not gonna work. You're gonna have to get a single lens reflex that you can manually adjust all the settings and take a specific amount of timed exposure. That allows you to compare, how bright is this setting versus another setting if you're going to be showing different levels of foot candles. Did you have other
Yeah,
comments?
the other one to sort of frame the discussion is like, there was a point made that a lot of these are driven by complaints or concerns that are expressed. And I think I heard you say that you have heard some concerns about perhaps lighting that's out there or maybe what our code is steering folks to. And, I wonder if there are specific pain points that residents or motorists or others have about lighting in Littleton now that would point to something that we should be including in the code. Like one thing I think of is, okay, foot candles is the light that's projected on the ground, but somebody might be concerned about the glare coming from a light that's, shooting straight out, or even the reflection off a building and not off the ground. And that's not measured in foot candles, that's lumens, right? So maybe we do need to add lumens to the formula to, at the risk of making it a little more complicated, but it might be important in the enforcement of the ordinance.
Yeah, the nice thing about it too is that we have a number of recent examples. So we can pull from a number of developments and look at what lighting they're proposing and seeing kind of where a baseline is. Yeah, if we, say we go to 16,000 for, that's probably poor, like 20,000 for industrial. What is that pretty common? Are we seeing far above that, want to bring that down, rein it in? Or are we seeing people only apply with 10,000 lumen bulbs? So we can do a little research just on what's being proposed here, the trend that we're seeing, and then compare that to these codes and try to find out where we think kind of that happy medium is.
Good.
I appreciate the discussion of the happy medium, because the intro to the outdoor lighting standards A5 says that one of the purposes of this is to minimize light pollution while ensuring that you can have sufficient lighting. And I think our letting you have 40-foot candles anywhere on the site doesn't achieve the first part of that sentence. So,
It seemed to me that we generally expect shielded and downward facing lighting just across the board. And that should, Craig, that should probably help in terms of how much direct light people are getting in their faces, that we just don't really allow things even at 90 degrees off the fixture. And I think in general, wherever we're looking at codes to compare, the more conservative that is. You mentioned dark skies. The model code is not a dark skies compliant model lighting. That's a dark skies model lighting?
It's designed by, in conjunction with Dark Skies Initiatives.
Okay. So when you compare what's being described there, are we more permissive or less?
Yeah, we would be more permissive
We're
than
way
the-
more permissive than the model lighting ordinance.
Yeah, it's the challenge with the model lighting ordinance, and I think we can still compare and potentially utilize some of their
Parameters.
parameters, especially on maximums. I would just, and it sounds like, the planning commission is on board with this. I don't know that I would recommend basically adopting those standards just because they come with a number
No, I'm
of
not
additional
suggesting that.
requirements, right? But I think we can learn from what they have in regards to max lumens, et cetera, in different zones. I think we can take some of those standards and compare them to other municipalities and try to work some of those standards in where we feel that they're applicable.
and some of the illustrations in the model lighting code were pretty helpful. They have the examples of cut-off and non-cut-off pictures, examples of prohibited wall pack style lighting. Those sorts of items would be helpful to import.
Yeah, our code, I agree, does not have much of the way of graphics in it in this section, so.
I think the performance requirements are more important than some of the stipulations about height and spacing and so on. And I'll give an example, at Denver Parks, we do a lot of tennis courts, ball field, and even parking lot lighting. And so I get involved in these discussions and the technology, like I said, has changed so much with LEDs that they can cut off, they can put taller poles in on a tennis court, twice as high, and cut them off much, much better than the old ones were. So I think we replaced some 24-foot height ones in some tennis courts recently down in Bear Valley, which is kind of a dark area, it's a dark area. And there were neighbors that were really concerned about it, and we said we were gonna put 50-foot poles up there, they're like,
Shield
And-
focused.
but this company out of Iowa that does court lighting and ball field lighting, Musco, they showed us on the photometric plans how they would cut it off, and they cut it off to 0 at the property line. So it was much, much better after those 50-foot poles.
Even though the height was twice as high as the former poles.
So the
kind of
performance
amazing.
is not what it's not directly related to height or spacing or anything. We were able to use a lot less poles. I think they had like 20 poles out there and we ended up with 6. You know, so save some money.
Sure. It'll be a great day when we have more control. The more control we have on the lights, even to changing their intensity when you have someone come and complain, and when the adjustability of the future lights also.
And timing, you know, having photometrics that turn them
It's
on
very
and
good,
timers
very
that
good
turn
thing
them
to
off.
have, yeah. Plus, we can hope that that just keeps going in that direction.
Yeah, on the sports field lighting, I think that's a good one to contrast are the new soccer field lights at Cornerstone Park versus the softball fields on the northeast corner. The ones that, those throw a lot of glare
Yes.
off-site compared to the new ones.
Even the newer ones they built at Heritage High School.
You building what?
Here, this was a few years ago, it's been what?
Soccer field lights are relatively new.
Yeah,
That whole area seems very bright to me.
yeah,
I'm
it's-
glad the soccer ones are better than the softball fields.
yeah, the ones at Heritage they seem directed better than the old ones. So they just they don't throw off quite as much light, it feels like, but it still feels bright though, so.
In terms of code compliance work, what do you have in terms, do you have like a device that you go and walk around the perimeter of a parcel to measure the foot candles? What's the current light policing situation?
We haven't received too many complaints regarding commercial parcels at this point in time. The more the complaints that come in regarding code compliance are residential, somebody who's put, that security light on that shines in my window. Basically, how we interpret the code is we do trust the photometric plans, but then you go out on site, you look at the poles, right? Now, they could have put a stronger head in, that is very true. That's something that would be challenging for us currently to monitor. I'll have to check with code compliance. I thought I heard them
You don't have to for
indicate.
me, I just was wondering if you had like a little foot candle device and or you roll it around the lot line or something. I didn't know how it was evaluated. You're over your 40 foot candle. Maybe that's such a high level, nobody even bothers to complain.
Normally that's under a gas station canopy and, yeah. But I could still, I thought I heard them indicate that they did have some form of meter, but I'm not 100% on that, so I'll have to check.
It's okay, Jared, you don't have to, if it didn't.
Show you one.
And you have one of those, an illuminance meter? You can walk around. It's like
Minolta
it's like a
T10A.
photographer. Well,
Yeah.
photographers have those, I've seen those, okay.
Okay. Yeah, I think, I guess general consensus is, a little more detail and, consider, limiting certain areas to foot candles as we were discussing this evening, but let's not go all the way to the full model ordinance. Unless you can find an example that it works really well in.
I think this was a great presentation. Thank you for doing the comparisons. I think that was very helpful. I think that whatever you come up with as far as, I guess, from our feedback, it seems like it would be worthwhile bouncing it off a lighting consultant or a developer, somebody who implements this to say, well, no, you can't do that. And just tell us why, just so we know, because there are some cost implications associated with if we're too restrictive, if we're not restrictive enough on it or not performance oriented enough. I know, you can get really good lighting fixtures that cost 10 times as much as the real cheap ones, and then those cheap ones don't control the light. So if we want them to control the light, they're gonna have to spend more, and they're always looking for ways to save things, so getting that sort of feedback would be helpful. People actually design and manage those lighting systems.
We can certainly do.
Or to poke holes in it than to tell us what we should be doing.
Yeah, whenever I take an ordinance to a bunch of stakeholders, I try my best to indicate, I'm looking for feedback. It doesn't necessarily mean that all of your feedback will be incorporated into the code, but we're looking for feedback, so, yeah.
Not seeing any further comments or questions, so we'll adjourn the study session at 7:42.
And Chair, do you mind if I
Thank
take a
you.
couple minutes after? Littleton had model lighting in its code from 2000 to 2010.